Out. This is new for all of us. Councilor Green, the chair, couldn't be here, so he asked me to run the meeting. Councilor Carney's the other member, and apparently a bunch of people at his shop called out, so he's not here for the moment either. But I think Councilor Bay might come. We have Councilor Majak. Oh, I can't. Oh, Councilor Joel. And I'm Councilor Rudd. And so basically the goal is to go over the stuff that's going to be coming onto the agenda and just to review it to say, oh yeah, this is good to go on the agenda.
Yep.
So I know there were multiple messages from various folks about items coming on, and I'm not going to be able to articulate them, but go for it. What's coming through?
We got two things on the legislation regarding sidewalks. We got our annual accessible sidewalk program as well as our city-owned sidewalk program, but that's every year we do that. We also got our annual bonding for unimproved streets, our slurry seal. That's annual. And then we have our fiber optics trunk replacement program that Neil can probably elaborate more on that.
Okay. Were there other engineering items? I know there was an email from Mary. Oh, are you gonna? Oh, okay. Okay, that's cool. I just wasn't sure. So how many items do you have?
Looks like 2 items.
2 items. Okay, and that's everybody.
Yes, that's
Okay.
everybody.
I'm just trying to get a picture of the
Okay.
whole
Sorry
meeting,
about that.
so I don't spend 20 minutes on one item and then have no time for anything else when there's 10 more items.
Okay.
But okay, so we can go through those 3 first. I know the first one is this accessible sidewalks. I think, right. So my only question is, Neil, we've talked about the potential for like a municipal sidewalk fee, and we've talked about the potential of doing a broader condemnation of the worst sidewalks potentially before that. So my only question is the 1.4 million. I know that's what we've basically done, $1 million a year, and 1.4. I don't know how the change goes, but I could imagine that maybe for a year we would want, if we decided to do that type of thing, that we would have a bigger amount for the accessible sidewalk condemnation type program. So do you have any thought on how it connects to that, or whether we could come, if we did that, we would then be coming back to authorize more in the future? How do you see those things relating?
So there is a larger conversation happening revolving around sidewalks. However, we do need to continue as is for now because there are no concrete steps being taken at the moment. So we have to act as if the current situation is what will unfold in the future. So again, no real changes to the program at this point. But if there were to be, say, a municipal program, there would need to be a gap, would need to be a bridge that would need to be filled, and obviously that's a discussion we'd have with council as well as some of our other departments to get a much better and more tangible number before we started doing anything.
Okay, that's fine. Any questions on the sidewalk piece?
Well, no.
So we talk about our double pour, single pour. The concept, is there any chance we should adjust that just regardless of broader strategy changes in order to make it easier? Or I don't know, I'm throwing it out there.
No, that's a good question. It's one that we get a lot, and without speaking for the engineering department too much, we currently use a 2-pour system. It's something we've used for a while. The rationale is that it lasts better in our climate, knowing that we have serious freeze thaw, salt, you name it. This second pour is meant to prolong the life of the sidewalk. We are the only municipality that uses this as far as I can deduce. I think we haven't been able to find anyone else who uses it. It doesn't mean it's not worth it. And what the cost savings are, our current street features contract, they're negligible. However, if we were to look broadly at the city as a whole in large-scale replacements, it would be worth evaluating whether or not pulling just a standard New York State DOT spec off the shelf, which is a single pour, We would evaluate if that's cost effective. It's definitely going to be part of something that we do moving forward, but for right now, it's standard is two
It
pour.
just seems like, I guess, yeah, that's fine. Because we could change the law. It seems like when we authorize this type of spending, maybe it's also a good time to, if there's an adjustment that makes it easier or even potentially cheaper, if we don't believe it to be overly damaging, it might be a reasonable thing to do.
Now, with the sidewalks, how once you replace one, right? What's the life of it before you replace it again?
What's the life, Chris, of a sidewalk normally?
30 years at least.
30 years.
Okay, 30 years.
Okay.
Depending, certain parts of sidewalks, especially where it crosses through a driveway, those might need more replacing more readily. But there are some very old sidewalks in residential areas that don't see a lot of traffic. They don't have cars crossing them, so they last a very long time.
Okay, so this is more of like just a very basic question. I know years, and could have changed now, I know years ago, it takes about, to pave or, construct like a mile of a road, it costs about $1 million, right? For a sidewalk like that, what would it roughly cost? Like, so say,
It can range, from 5 to 15,000, right, Chris? Depending on the corner of,
yeah.
okay, we'll wait. I guess Chris is using his calculator to figure it out, but
It's $400.
come speak at the mic, Chris.
$450,000.
For a mile times 5 feet wide times 17 foot a square foot.
What?
$450,000.
$450,000. And that's two sides, or just one?
This one.
So each block is like $400.
$400, yeah.
Each flag is $400.
Yeah, I mean, if it's $1 million a mile of road, it makes sense that concrete's more expensive, but it's not as wide as the road. So that seems
But
reasonable. Or like,
contractors put out an itemized contract. We do this every 2 years. And the prices get set for that. So like you're talking about changing all this. When this goes to a different system, we would put out a new contract. There'd be larger quantities, so that might drive the price down.
right.
If we're saying right now this contract has 50 items in it.
Right.
We do away with 40 of them and only have concrete sidewalks or aprons or things like that, and it's for a larger amount, quantity-wise.
Right.
The price would be different per
Right.
square foot.
So how many, oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's just how the items are, and it's per square foot, and it includes the digging out, new stone. So there's a lot. It's not just the concrete, it's also the excavation, removal of the items, putting new stone down.
So do I take that you have one specific contractor that does all of this, or do you send it out for a bid every time there is?
Goes out to bid, and whoever's the lowest bidder, we accept that bid. If
Okay.
they meet all our standards,
Okay.
then we use them.
Is there any challenge to that process where you can't find too many bidders?
We usually only end up with one bidder. There's only one contractor around who bids on most of our street structures and sidewalk contracts.
And that is because you don't have that many out there, do you?
Some of them are scared of certain items that we do, curbing and stuff like that. They don't want to touch it. That's what I've been told by other contractors.
Is that,
Just a sidewalk contract, we maybe get more out there interested. Or if we did a larger scale, maybe we get multiple contractors we could bid on, or it's just something we'd have to look into.
The contractor is McConnell. Which contractor is it that we actually?
Well, there's some McConnell, but there's two McConnells that do sidewalks. One of them only does the pouring. He won't do any digging or excavating. He doesn't have that kind of equipment. He's just the laborer and goes and puts it down, puts the forms.
and I take this is not a city resident, obviously, a city person.
Hank McConnell, the business is in
The
the city.
business is in the city?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, he's
He's not
like
here.
WB.
50 years doing
okay,
sidewalks.
okay, all right.
There's potential as we move this sidewalk discussion, this larger sidewalk discussion forward about pulling concrete sidewalks out of the street features contract and having it be its own item, so we could get multiple bids, and a lot of new players there, because there are a lot of companies that do concrete sidewalks. So in theory, we could get different bids, especially if we're looking for economies of scale. Right now, it's about small replacement items, and we don't really do blocks of sidewalk. We would definitely expect the price to come down if we were to bid something that large out.
Now, and the bid is usually within the county. That's why there's such a limited number of bidders that are coming out, right? Is it within the county?
I don't know
Or
if
is there a
there's
limitation to it?
I think it's just,
There's no requirement that they have to be a county in the business.
that tends to be where a lot of the bids come from, local companies. We're not getting usually bids from places downstate or anything like that on our contracts, at least for this one.
Okay, I think that, there's no objection to that one, let's move forward. And then, the slurry,
yep, slurry seal.
let's talk a minute about that. And I know slurry gets questions from, broader folks all the time,
Yep.
so I'd just have your standard answers ready for that when we get to the bigger meeting.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But this is our annual program that we actually slurry the entire city and break it down in cycles. So this cycle's, I think, 3, I believe. It's the south side of the city, majority. So it's just, I mean, if you're not familiar with slurry, so I don't know if you are.
I'm not.
All right, so it's basically something that we do to prolong the life of our roads. Sort of like what you do if you seal your driveway, right? I mean, your driveway's starting to wear and tear, and we put this sealant over it to keep it all together. So that's what we do. We try to slurry seal unimproved streets, things that doesn't have curbs, and that gets billed on your taxes, right? So the following year.
And you said it's mostly on south side?
No, we break it down in cycles. We
Okay.
do an entire city, but this cycle's cycle 3, and I think that's the south. I want to say southwest side of the city that we're going to focus on this year.
I think they basically do it by quadrant, so every 4 years they do a section, and
Yeah.
they do it in a quadrant, because that way they can just do all the streets in one area.
Okay.
So it's more efficient.
Yeah, in-house, we call them cycles. Obviously, it's a quadrant, but it's sort of like our cycle overlaps some of the quadrants, so we don't call it quadrants, so we call it cycles.
Okay. Now, you said it's added to the tax after 2 years, right?
It's added, right, there's a fee that
Yes,
pays
there's a
for it.
fee to maintain that
Oh, there's a
to the
fee.
taxpayers.
So every 4 years, if you live on an unimproved street, you get a fee for
I-
the slurry seal.
And I do, and I'm asking that because why is that? Why? I'm just trying to understand why because street improvement is for everyone in the city, isn't it? I know you schedule it.
Yeah, only because we street sweep as well, and we slurry seal. So if you have a curb on your street, we sweep it. If you you don't have a curb, we slurry seal. So that both of those things kind of improve the life cycle of the road. So I don't know why
Yeah, I'm stuck where people get charged for stuff like that.
Laura, you have any ideas of why we charging? Can you come up to the mic, please?
We charge for sweeping for roads that have curbs, and we charge for slurry for the roads that are no curbs. We bill the taxpayers for that, for the maintenance of those roads, of all city streets. So you're either getting charged for sweeping or you're getting charged for the slurry. You're not getting charged for both.
Both, yeah.
In addition to your taxes.
It's part of your taxes.
So here's a really simpleton question. But the slurry, you don't use it on curbed streets because it would build up the road over time. Like the road is just fundamentally different. So you just patch curbed roads and then eventually
If it
once,
deteriorates,
we would replace it all.
Yeah.
So in the lifetime is basically 4 years. Is that 4 years?
Well, for the slurry, they do it
Every 4 years.
4 years,
So
because-
we'll come back every 4 years and slurry your street.
I saw mine done 2 years ago. And
We'll be back in another 2 years.
Back another 2 years. I look forward to seeing you.
Oh yeah, it helps, right? It helps. It makes it look a little better on your road.
Yeah.
All right, I'll call that one. Ready? And then the third one, the fiber optic.
Fiber optics, this is, so if we zoom out here a little bit, we have an interconnected traffic signal system called the interconnect system. Not very creative. All of the connected signals are connected back to a control station at D.P.W, the Traffic Control Center, which we're now calling the Traffic Management Center. And so this is one room tucked away with a lot of blinking lights and monitors. This is where things like timing sequences for morning rush hour, PM rush hour, this is where they are implemented from. And also the system lets us see if a signal is out, we can tell. Or if we need to make adjustments, we can do that in-house. It's not quite as advanced as some other systems. The state has one next door that's far and away larger capacity than ours, but all cities and really all metropolitan regions have some version of this. So ours has started in bits and pieces here over the past 20 plus years. There is a main line, a trunk of fiber optic cable that all of these lights feed into that leads back to D.P.W. That trunk is aging out. It has been had some deferred maintenance. It has had collapsed conduit under the street over the years. There have been things added to it. It is at the end of its lifespan and also at the top of its capacity. So there is a separate project going on which will be adding more lights to the system. The North, South, East, West expansion project, which is being managed separately but on a concurrent timeline. So as we're adding more lights to the system, we need to make sure that the capacity is there. And so we are replacing the fiber optic trunk to make sure that it's in good condition to support current operations and also future operations as we add more lights together. This is something we've been planning for a little while now. We added it to the CIP years ago. Our estimate was low. Since that time, we've had a third party evaluate the system as a whole and tell us really what's out there, what needs to be fixed. We have 20-year-old system pieces that are being phased out by their manufacturers, meaning they're no longer supported. We have to take a look at those and make sure those are compliant and updated. So we are shuffling the cards a little bit here to make sure we have enough to cover the construction and also the construction inspection costs, because we don't want just something to be built and unleashed upon us. We want to make sure that it's properly functioning before we start adding more to it.
So the trunk, the part you call the trunk, is how long is that? And then what's the estimate that you have now for the cost?
So the trunk travels from D.P.W. basically down Burnett to snakes through downtown and ends up just south of downtown near Taylor Street. So it's a very long, circuitous route. It has built-in redundancy, which is what you want in the system. If one part breaks, you want to make sure that the data is still going through. The estimates we have coming in now, we budgeted $350. Our estimates are around $5. But we also want to make sure that, again, we have that construction inspection added to the end of this to make sure we know what's out there and that it's properly functioning. We don't want to just take one contractor at their word that they installed, tested, and it's good to go. Especially if this is something that we're counting on for our traffic network, we need to make sure that it's top-notch.
You mentioned the state having a different system nearby. That's because all the lights at off-ramps and such are the state, they're not us. What's the which lights are not ours that people might think are ours?
Adams Street.
Yeah, I was going to say Adams.
Adams Street. Also, portions of Erie Boulevard where we maintain the right-of-way. However, the state signals, that's their equipment. And so long-term, we are looking at what our options are for better collaboration and maybe co-location of some of these systems. Other regions do that, not all of them, but we think that's an option sort of mid to long term. But for right now, we need to make sure our system is in proper order. And whatever happens in the future, it will still be our system. We'll still have to maintain it. But especially with pending items like 81 and all of the detours that need to come down, we're making sure we're in a good position now internally, and also we have good relations with our partners at New York State to try and avoid some of the headaches that are inevitable with the pending highway work.
This goes beyond your item, but Adams Street's completely controlled by the state, basically. The reason I ask is I literally walked around the two schools there yesterday, and it seems pretty obvious we're gonna have to make some changes to Adams Street, given putting lots of kids there, because the highway that's 7 feet from a school building. Is that, if we want a school to open in 2.5 years, is that something we should probably start now on how to move the curb? And I don't know.
So that's a good item to bring up. The system as it exists now, the roadway network, is part of what goes into the modeling that you'll see in the environmental impact statement that's coming from New York State regarding their highway options. So now is the time to have higher level discussions with New York State DOT that again rise, I think, a little higher than
So it's almost like
sitting
we
right
should
here.
communicate to the state DOT that, hey, we're gonna renovate this school, and we think this roadway probably needs adjustment, and you should
Correct.
consider that as you weigh your options.
correct.
Okay, I'll say that one's ready to go forward. Do we want to go over a couple?
Russell Hauk with the Engineering Department, filling in for Mary Robison. I believe there are 2 items from engineering on the agenda. The first is a pedestrian safety action plan. We are looking for a request for money for design on that plan. We're looking to improve approximately 60 uncontrolled intersections for pedestrians inside the city, as well as 80 signalized intersections. Right now, this request is just for design funds, which will be designed this year, and look at implementation next year on the project. 95% federal money, 5% local money on it.
What typically happens when you add pedestrian friendly to I'm not going to repeat the terms properly, but what's the change typically look like that happens with this type of money?
I'm sorry?
What changes typically happen? Is it like you paint crosswalks? Is it you put the pedestrian accessible corners? Is it both? Is it
this
something
is
more?
not sidewalks as much, but more crosswalk markings, signage at the uncontrolled intersections, improved signage. At the signalized intersections, it would be more audible signals, signage as well. Again, this is not sidewalk replacement. That there aren't funds for this at this point. Yeah.
To build on Russ's explanation, the PSAP money, the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan money, came down to the city from the state. There are select packages that they included there, so there's package A or package B, depending on what the intersection already has. And basically, you apply the characteristics of the intersection, it tells you which one, and you add it to the list, and then they give us funding to go and build out package B or package A.
Right. So there's a limited amount of funding. I believe if we found something needed ADA improvements, we would try to focus money on that, but it might limit money other places as well in the project. Again, we're looking at design this year, implementation next year, construction. Okay.
Okay, this is also probably unrelated, but a question that I just think of. Is there a standard for, in terms of ADA, when you drop the curb? So you have a choice to cross this street or to cross that street, and sometimes we drop the curb in the middle, and sometimes we drop it at like the both
Right, I
angles.
think it
is
all
there
de-
like a standard that's actually right or normal, or is it?
It's going to depend on each situation at that intersection of roads, and many times what is existing at that point there as well.
Okay, I think that one's ready to move forward. And what's
Okay.
the last one?
And the second one was for request for construction inspection services, funding for that, for the downtown mill and pave project. That will be milling and paving State Street from MLK north to James Street, and Salina Street from MLK north to the, I don't have this here, but to the north side of the city. It'd be approximately 3 miles of milling and paving in that project. That's already been designed. Construction will be this year, and this is for construction inspection for CNS engineers. This project is 80% federally funded, 20% local.
And the total cost estimate is?
For the construction inspection is 1.2 million. I don't have the total number for construction, but based on that, that'd be in the $5 to $10 million range.
Because we kind of bantered around this $1 million mile number. The number for road recon is actually higher, right? It's like 3 or 4 million a mile. Do you know?
It's depending on what will be done there.
Yeah.
I can get you the exact numbers on that. That might be the best thing.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
And then I would just say, if you don't have it now, maybe just know how far up North Salina
Right.
where
Okay.
it stops.
So it stops around Lodi, basically where State and Salina come back together.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Now, just to understand something, you said local funds. Now, is that strictly city or
That
strictly
is city. That's not the state
Okay, so the
Marchicello
state,
funds.
and we take that, none of this street has anything to do with state. There's no way that it crosses into state property in any way or state side, because if you're saying it's coming that way to this way, right? From MLK?
Right. I just went either way, but yeah.
So I'm thinking it's gonna have to go through some kind of state property somewhere. Is state putting anything in it at all, or
As
do we
far
just-
as far as
we-
I know, no.
So,
But
so if you cross and you come to Adams Street, right? It's gonna somehow come through Adams Street. Do we just leave that part of state alone and jump over to
Right.
our side, or what do
It
we
will
do?
cross state roads. It will.
Okay.
Yes.
So we just jump over state. We don't bother with it, and we go pick up where we pick up, or do we also include the state?
Well, I will check on that. I'm not the project manager of this project, but
Yeah, we
I
wanna
believe
know.
it'll go through the whole way. But
Okay.
There'll have to be some
Right, but
coordination with the state. Yeah.
I'm asking that, Russ, because if it is gonna cross the state line, state should somehow be, giving us something, because we are going to be fixing their stuff.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, hey, if it is $50,000, hey,
I'll have an answer by the end of the day.
Please.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then just last, the two items, how do they connect? So for instance, you mentioned the, ADA type improvements to the intersections.
Pedestrian improvement
Pedestrian
projects.
improvements. And then where you end the road recon on North Salina, that North Salina Lodi intersection I think of as like a very complicated, so like does that intersection get the treatment of the pedestrian friendly
that's
upgrade? Since
kind
we're
of-
redoing the
yeah.
street, do we do that at the same time, or are they like not really connected in that way?
They're separate projects, but that pedestrian improvement, that's going on right now, exactly which intersections will be upgraded. There's been a preliminary list. We're still kind of going through that list, and no, they wouldn't overlap or double dip, however you want to look at it. But
That project, it's John Kiverland's. If you mill and pave a road, you have to update the corner. So that project they're doing from MLK to State Street on Salina, every intersection or every 88 corner will be updated. And any sidewalk that needs improving will be approved.
Yeah,
Same with State
crosswalks.
Street.
Yeah.
right,
John
so
just told me that of those two streets they're doing, all the ADAs will be included in that project.
it sounds like that includes paving through as well.
Well, if you
So,
mill and pave a road
Yeah.
near an ADA corner, you have to update the corner. It's a federal law. It's a state law or federal law.
Okay.
I mean, it kind of seems like dig once. Like it seems like we would want to coordinate so that we're making the change at one time and not coming back.
I mean, the goal is to stretch that money as far as we can, really, and we will. So.
Right. I guess I would just say make sure we coordinate the recon work with the pedestrian upgrade stuff. All right, with that, I think that's ready.
Okay, I'll get you some more details.
We'll see you in front of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
No,